So you're looking to get into a role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons or Larp, and you want to know how to roleplay? If so, you've come to the right place. Hi, I'm Wolf Maiden, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to roleplay. There's a few things to consider when you're going to roleplay a character. One of the chief ones is what game you're playing or attending. Since playing characters are specific to games, you first have to look at the rules, their classes, the skills, things that you can actually do in this game. Because if you want to be a blacksmith and let's say it's set in the modern day, they might not have that skill, that might not be a thing you can do, and your character might just be completely null, the one that you thought in your head that you wanted to play. So to avoid making a character or role-playing a character that you can't play, you first should look at the rules of the game you're going to play. There are some exceptions to this. One would be if you have a very minor idea of what you would like your character to be like. Something tiny that is just one part of a bigger concept, like a penchant for picking flowers, which is pretty universal if you're outside or you're in a setting in Dungeons & Dragons that's outdoors and you find yourself always going toward flowers and picking them. That's something that people can know about your character, you can work with your character, and yeah, gives it a little bit of definition. Now, the only time that specific idea wouldn't work would probably be if you have an indoor venue. There's not any chance to display that part of a character. So some of this will be more geared toward LARPing, but some of it I think can also be used for Dungeons & Dragons or other tabletop RPGs. So among the other things to consider, there's another three really important ones, like, well, first, are you going to have fun playing your character? If your character is really quiet and never talks to anybody, are you going to have fun doing that? Are you going to enjoy boxing yourself into a profession, for example, or this idea that you really like picking flowers, and I don't know, maybe you have allergies. Maybe this actually literally won't work. You shouldn't be picking up flowers, or the flowers around are like weeds and maybe you don't want to touch those. Are you going to enjoy that, or is it going to be a hindrance to you? Is this character going to be something you actually want to play? Maybe you have decided that you want to be a fighter, but when you actually get into combat, you find you don't like the combat in this game, or you're just not interested in the way that you're fighting. Maybe you'd rather be a magic user. So if you find swinging a sword boring, you don't want to be a fighter, for example. If you want to play a character that's more social and you decide, okay, I'm going to pick these flowers, are you going to have props? Are you going to have fake flowers? Are you going to have a basket, right, that you actually put real flowers or maybe dandelions and, you know, things that wouldn't be harmful if you picked them? If that's something that you're willing to do, you know, that's something to consider. Maybe you're always holding a particular flower. Maybe there's a flower behind your ear. Maybe there's flowers on your head. You know, that's something that you could do. But if you find that you're becoming bored with flower picking and always carrying a basket or whatever that you're doing, that is also a consideration to take into account. Would it be fun? Is it fun? If you don't want to do it in real life, or if the idea already isn't fun sounding, maybe skip on that concept. So because LARP and tabletop RPGs are very much cooperative play, they're a team game, you should not be primarily thinking about your own fun, because you might find that you are not fun for other people to play with. There's a common one that everybody thinks of when they think of somebody who's both not having fun and not really fun for other people to play with, and that would be the lone rogue. You know, the one who wants to be on his own and doing his own thing and doesn't want to talk to people and is just very shady. And you'll find quickly that you, obviously, if you're pushing people away, people won't hang out with you, and if you don't hang out with other people, you're sort of not participating in the game, and it just kind of, yeah. You want to make sure that other people will enjoy playing with you when you make a character. Now, that doesn't mean you have to make a perfect character and that your character has to be very happy and smiley and friendly, because that's not the case. You can make a complicated character. You can still do that. You can make a character who has a backstory and fears and all of that, but you do have to think about others. And now, the third consideration is, if you're willing to put the work in for this roleplay concept, is it worth the time? Is it worth the money? And is it worth the effort for you? If a concept involves really large props, transporting things, buying things, maintaining things, and so on, if that is a problem, you may want to consider something else. So I've harped on these things for a bit. So let's say you do have a character. There are a bunch of things to consider. Like I said, first, the classes, the skills, the rules of the game that you're playing in. For medieval fantasy, there's a lot of things you could be, both within the game's class system and within just your own, imaginative thing that you create, right? So it's probably not going to be a class for, going back to it again, selling flowers, right? Or picking flowers, because you probably run out of flowers very quick. But if there was not a class for a flower picker or an herbalist of some sort, but you still wanted to play that is something you can do. That is something that you can bring to the game as a idea that is separate from the game's rules and stuff. It's just a little thing. Or maybe, again, you are picking flowers. Maybe you have a different flower every day, right? And you mentioned that you picked it up on your way over to the tavern and whatnot. That's a little flair, that's a little flavor, that's good. Now, you could also have a profession within the game's classes. Let's say that there is a blacksmith position, right? Maybe you actually have a Larp hammer and you brought it to the game, and you occasionally can be found hammering away on an anvil. Maybe you bring the anvil yourself, it's just a little representation of it. It's not perfect, but that adds something to the game. When you're working with the actual professions and trying to be as immersive as possible with these ideas, and just adding your own props and ideas into things. There's maybe 3 things that define people and, as such, characters. Your family, your beliefs, your profession, and then your own personality, I would say. So there's a few of those. So you can consider that when you're making a character. If something is harder than another, like making a family idea, maybe you're like, I really don't know what I'm going to do for this. Start with a profession, because then you can start to answer some family questions. Why does your character do this? Oh, well, his father taught him that. Why does your character do that? Oh, well, his mother taught him that. It's a snowball effect, I feel like. Once you figure something out, you might be able to figure something else out. Finding something that you are interested in making a focal point could also help. If you really like to heal and you carry bandages with you and, surgical equipment, then role-playing about loss might go hand in hand. Like, why did your character become a doctor, right? Or a physician? Maybe there's some trauma there, maybe they lost a loved one, and it kind of it can build like that. It can be something very small that really brings you down the road of your character becoming more of a character, I guess. So personality-wise, it's always easier to kind of put a little bit of your personality into a character, unless you're willing to commit to, like, for example, if you can be a lot more demure and then you speak a lot more eloquently and you can hold yourself in such a way that other people can kind of see that you are very reserved, but, honest and respectable that could be what you roleplay as. If you're rough and tumble, you know, you're just kind of always, you know, your posture, the way you stand, it can really say a lot about your character. What your hair is it up, is it down, is it covered? The weapons that you carry, if any, the armor that you wear. So part of it is costuming, part of it is you in that respect. There's a lot to consider. One thing that I think a lot of people think is you put on a voice, and you kind of, putting on a voice is like an easy way of changing into a character, but you know, you might not always be comfortable with changing your voice, or even changing your voice. You're still yourself, right? You still sound like you would sound if you're, you know, you curse like a sailor, and your character changes their voice, but they curse like a sailor too, you know, it's you. So you have to make sure that you are aware of the things that you normally do and the things that you're not trying to bring into your character, and stop that or change that. I think I heard from Larp Girl once that she talks about how she brings one thing into her character that she actually wants to work on for herself. I thought that was very interesting. I like that concept a lot. And maybe you'd find it interesting too, to put into a character where you try to work on those, making friendships, or being more outgoing, or being more sociable or charitable, or something nice. You know, you might want to put that into a character. Now, if you're making more complicated, evil-minded characters, like that might not work, of course. But you can always put something there, like a sympathy, an empathy. It's not necessarily a weakness, it's just something that is, you know? So family. Of course, some people will have friends that they LARP with, and friends that they can connect with to beforehand work out family lines, or like relationships and stuff, like, oh, you're my cousin twice removed, I don't know. You're my husband and you aren't even dating. You're my coworker, we used to be mercenaries together or something. You can kind of build that network beforehand. But if you don't have that beforehand, that can be kind of rough. You might have to have parents that exist, but they're not there. You know, they don't exist in the setting. Maybe they are already dead. You just kind of cut off all lines. You're starting fresh. Maybe you're a fresh adventurer. You're just up and coming. Like an easy concept would probably be an adventurer who doesn't have any weird family story and is just up and coming and wants to adventure. You know, it wants to start. They've got a pretty clean slate. They're, you know, maybe they're everybody's alive in their family. They've got brothers and sisters, or none, and just parents, you know, and they were raised by their parents and everything's fine and normal. So it could be that way too, where the story is yet to come. You can kind of leave it pretty open to go in any direction that it happens to go in. So the beliefs of a character, you have to figure out within the context of a game as well. If there are gods, if there is one god, there is, you know, mythical creatures or fairies or whatever, like other worlds, things like that, and what people believe in these settings to be true, or what your character might believe to be true. Maybe they believe in something that does not exist, something that can be easily explained, insofar as, like, I saw a tiny person with wings, you know, like a fairy or a pixie or something. And then beliefs can also be what your character goes by, like a code of conduct. If characters are, like, you have a knight type character, he's very noble, and always treats, you know, women with respect, right? Not going to pick a fight with a lady, or to be rude or brash, or, you know, arrogant, or things like that. Like, they try to be a certain type of way. That would be what would cover beliefs, essentially. If there is a religion, if there is a code of conduct, or a way that you conduct your life, whether you have a thing that you do every day in the camp or in your LARP or whatever, something that is between habitual, sacred, and meaningful to a character. That is something to think about. And so in practice, what this looks like, as the example that I currently have. Every morning my character wakes up, she picks a flower, she puts it in her basket. She takes this basket and she goes to town. Maybe she's going for breakfast. She greets everybody, maybe she curtsies, you know. There are little mannerisms and things that you can adapt if you are more inclined to be kind or rude even, I guess. If you just don't really care and you're just walking through camp like you know, you're not even looking at anybody, you don't really care. You sit down at your own place and you have your own posse or whatever, like that's a way to roleplay as well. So there's plenty to do. You put together a whole life, you know. You don't need everything all together, prim and perfect, defined to the T. Some things are done or made when you're in the heat of roleplay. Like if your character becomes kinder than you intended, meaner than you intended, these types of things happen, and like you shouldn't just put, my character is kind, you know, or put that in your head. How are they kind? How do they express these personality traits, these professions, these familial things, their religion, their character, if you will. So that's all the tips I have for today for creating and role-playing a character in LARP. I hope that this has been helpful in some way to you. I will be making more of these videos. I have a couple of series ongoing now, this being the second. I am trying to up more of my production. I don't want to always be doing stuff in this room. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of places that I can go right now to film, so, but I have a lot of ideas and I'm going to be bringing some exciting stuff, hopefully, to everybody. Things I hope that will be helpful or entertaining, or both. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.